A passionate, albeit not very talented filmmaker gives it everything he has to get his career off the ground. Sound cool? Because I'm here to talk about Ed Wood from 1994. So, Ed Wood was directed by cult filmmaker Tim Burton and stars Johnny Depp, Martin Landau, Sarah Jessica Parker, Bill Murray, and many, many more. Tim Burton was on top of the world and had already become a fan favorite director, having given us films like Beetlejuice, Batman, and his first of what would turn into many collaborations with Johnny Depp. And Johnny Depp is the lead here, playing the infamous Ed Wood, an enthusiastic director now known for making some of what many people call the worst movies ever made, such as Plan 9 from Outer Space and Night of the Ghouls. And the storyline here takes place during Ed's formative years as a director, like early to mid 50s, and it is quite the tale. And what you get here as far as the storyline goes is a combination of fact and fiction. And I think it's fair to say that most of what you see here actually happened, and that's part of what makes this just so damn good. And plot aside, the film is also very stylized, shot in black and white with cinematography that literally could not be more fitting to this story. This movie is beautiful to look at and masterfully filmed. Now, I gotta say, I'm not a big Tim Burton fan. I don't deny his talent, and I think he is one of the more interesting directors of our time, but I just don't really care for a lot of his work, personally. And on that note, I've never really been a Johnny Depp fan either, but he is absolutely great here as Ed Wood. Now, I don't know if his performance is close to how Ed was in real life. I have no idea, but it really doesn't matter to me. Because it's just such a charming performance. His version of Ed Wood is sweet, a bit naive and innocent, and it's kind of inspiring, to be honest. He's not at all judgmental, he takes care of people that he cares about, and even though he was not a skilled filmmaker, his dedication and refusal to quit is just, again, inspiring. He didn't have a successful career at all, and because of that, he didn't have an easy life, and he ended up dying on not a very positive note. But what I love about this film is that it really focuses on Ed's positivity, and it's a beautiful thing. But before I go any further, I absolutely have to talk about Martin Landau's performance here. He plays Bela Lugosi, and I cannot imagine anyone doing a better job. I mean, when I watch him, I forget that it's even Martin Landau every time. So Ed and Bella, end up crossing paths completely randomly, and Ed is starstruck since he's a huge Bela Lugosi fan. Bella, obviously famous for playing Dracula, has been out of work at this point for a long time. He was broke, and on top of that, addicted to morphine, and meeting Ed seemed to be a pretty good thing for him. For Ed, Bella was a celebrity he could cast in his movies, and for Bella, a little bit of money, some sense of purpose again. But most importantly, with Ed, he had a friend who would be there for him, for the short remainder of his life. Now, although Martin Landau's performance was, not completely accurate, because this is a Tim Burton film after all, it's an absolutely incredible performance, and he steals the show. In fact, he won an award for Best Supporting Actor in 1995. I think his portrayal of Bela Lugosi is becoming one of my favorite performances of all time. Keep in mind, I only watched Ed Wood for the first time just a few years ago. Even if Martin Landau steals the show, everyone turns in a great performance here. Sarah Jessica Parker plays Dolores, Ed's girlfriend. She is kind of like the grounded personality here, while all of Ed's friends and crew are kind of just taken by his charisma and passion. Dolores is kind of the opposite. She doesn't really see any talent or potential in Ed, as a lot of people didn't. But she isn't exactly afraid to be honest about it. And while she comes down on Ed pretty hard at times, it's really not hard to see her point of view. And she ends up getting, fed up, especially after learning about Ed's cross-dressing interest, and she dumps him. And the cross-dressing was indeed a real part of Ed's life. He was actually fairly open about it and felt comfortable revealing it, to his close friends and crew who seemed to love him and accept him for who he was. Ed ends up meeting Kathy, played by the always wonderful Patricia Arquette, who agrees to go out with Ed and doesn't judge him for his cross-dressing like Dolores did. Another interesting member of Ed's entourage, I think I'll call it, was Bunny Breckenridge, played by Bill Murray. Bunny's lifelong dream was to, finally be able to become a woman, and he was very open about it. And Bill Murray knocks it out of the park because he's Bill Murray. There's a few other minor characters that I have to mention, like Lisa Marie as Vampira, who also crosses paths with Ed and is convinced to play in Plan 9 from Outer Space. I think she might have been in Night of the Ghouls as well. Could be wrong. I just thought she was great. There's also Tor Johnson, played by former pro wrestler George the Animal Steele. I did not expect that, but George played the character very well, even if it was a kind of a cartoony portrayal. I mean, really, the entire movie, has a kind of cartoony vibe, and it's perfect. I also really enjoyed the Orson Welles cameo played by, well, I guess it was a Vincent D'Onofrio cameo. He plays Orson Welles, famous director from that era. He's only in one scene, but it's awesome. And there's probably a million more things I could say about this movie. It's just so well written and beautifully acted. And, I mean, it's just overall very inspiring, I love an underdog story. And even if things didn't ultimately work out for Ed, this movie focuses mainly on the positive. Tim Burton was a fan, and he wanted it to be this way. He wanted us to, see this side of Ed. His choice in detailing Ed's friendship with Bela Lugosi was very inspired by his own similar experience with meeting his own idol at an earlier age, Vincent Price. And I'm going to add, if you aren't familiar with Ed Wood's work, if anything I've said here sounds interesting to you, check this movie out. I mean, I've known about Ed Wood, the man himself, for some years now, and I've still yet to see any of his stuff. Fun fact here, in the Chinese restaurant episode in Seinfeld Season 2, Jerry, Elaine, and George are all going out to see Plan 9 from Outer Space. It's so cool. And I mean, surprisingly, this film wasn't very successful. It only made just under $14 million of its $18 million budget. Which, I gotta say, surprising to me on many levels. Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel both gave it 2 thumbs up, and Siskel said it was one of the best films of the year. I imagine that Tim Burton has an interesting fascination with Ed Wood, being a director himself, and there's no other director that I think could have done a better job. And like I've said already, the performances are all just so inspired, and for Johnny Depp and Martin Landau, this is some career-defining stuff. I'm giving Ed Wood 10 out of 10, full marks, no questions about it. Check it out if you're in the mood for a quirky, heartfelt film. Wes Anderson fans should definitely give it a shot. Let's boost this up into absolute classic territory. I think it deserves it. Cheers, guys.